tutu.
Okay, Ziv, we're gonna start. You hear me well?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So welcome everybody. Welcome everybody to the Miami Israeli Parliament Zoom video. Today we have, should be a very fascinating presentation about crypto Jews, and we're doing it together with the Jewish Heritage Alliance. And Dory will present the speakers today later, and then we're going to go straight to our meeting. A few things, because I know there's a lot of people here that are not usually coming on our meeting. It's in English. We're going to obviously conduct the meeting today in English due to the speakers and the audience. And but usually, just everybody know, we are conducting our meetings in Hebrew. So we are the Miami Israeli Parliament. We're part of 3 groups in South Florida, us being one group. The Riviera Parliament is the other. And then there's the Boca group, Boca Raton Parliament, Boca Parliament, that obviously working out of Boca. We are been in part of this group for almost 7 years. We started as the Young Israeli Parliament. We were young 7 years ago. Big part of what we're doing is, meeting every other Sunday. Lately, we're doing it on Zoom video. So if Ziv, if you don't mind bringing up who we are. I know that today we have people from all around the world, because I've been getting called from South America and I've been getting called from London. So I hope all of these people were able to join us today and hear something, probably something that is very dear to their heart. Myself, my family originated from Spain. 500 years ago, they left Spain to Greece. And then we are now 7, maybe 8 generations in Israel. They came to Israel in late 1700s. So my family originated from there, and my mother's generation still all speaking Ladino. So just few things about the Miami Israeli Parliament. You can look at the mission statement, but everything we do is around Jewish culture. Everything we do is around Israeli culture. Supporting the Israeli community, and of course, supporting Israel. Big part of what we do is giving, promoting the culture of giving, social giving, community giving. Obviously, these days of Corona, it's even more important than ever. And earlier today, the group volunteered in the kosher food bank in North Miami Beach. And once I'm done with the presentation, Ziv will show you a quick video of what we were doing today. Ziv, if you can go back to the goals. I don't see the goals anymore. Very good, excellent. So big part of what we're doing is the culture of giving. We're bringing speakers from all over the world. Usually we meet every other Sunday in the JCC in North Miami Beach. Lately, for the last 2.5 months, we're meeting via Zoom video, bringing speakers in every topic almost possible. We're connecting. Big part of what we're doing is also connecting with the future generations. We're all Jews, we're all Israelis. Our goal is to make sure that the younger generation, our kids and their kids, continuing the heritage, continuing the love to Israel. That's a big part of what we're doing in our group. And strengthening the ties with the Jewish community here in Miami. It was not always the case that Israelis and the Jewish people here work together, and we're trying to promote it, working with many organizations like the ISC, the Jewish Federation, et cetera, making sure we are fully involved and engaged with the community. And then, we're trying to promote business as well, entrepreneurship. We're bringing speakers around those topics, economics and business and marketing, and trying to support each other, doing business together, or at least, trying to support businesses either here or together with the state of Israel. It's, a pleasure being here today. bringing a topic that is relatively new to many of us, outside of politics, outside of, economy, maybe something that goes, hundreds of years back, a topic that I'm, looking forward to hear more about. And before we do that, I'd like just to show, talking about the culture of giving, I'd like to show the video of what we've done earlier this morning in the kosher food bag. Ziv, if you can bring the video, please. Thank you. No sound.
אפילו עם המצלמות וכל זה.
Okay, I think that's good. So I think we're good. So just so everybody know, the food bank is helping and feeding on a constant basis over 450 families in Dade County, South Florida. And these days, at least since the corona started, it's helping and supporting another 1,200 families through synagogues in South Florida. So we've done it today. We also, together with the Jewish Federation, about 2 weeks ago, we did, in a big effort, we donated, at least people from the group and the community donated to the Jewish Federation in order to support families in need with actual cash and grants. Today it was supporting the food bank. So that's it on us, the Miami Israeli Parliament. Pleasure to have the speakers tonight. And now I'm going to move to Dori Larea, the Vice Chairman of myself. I didn't even present myself. Yoram Ben Amram, the Chairman of the Miami Israeli Parliament. Dori Larea is the Vice Chairman of our Parliament, and he'll present the speakers tonight. Thank you, Dori.
Thank you so much, Yoram. Hello, everyone. Very proud and pleased to be here with you today. I have to tell you, I was introduced to Michael Steinberg and the Jewish Heritage Academy just a few weeks ago by our friend and member, Itamar. Thank you for the introduction, Itamar. And right from the start, I was captivated by his passion and commitment to share the historical saga of Sefarad and take it from the halls of academia to Main Street. I share his feeling. This is a story that must be heard. Story of our brothers and sisters, fellow Jews that were forced to convert by the Inquisition and their descendants as they make their way back to their Jewish roots. So I'm proud to give you, Michael, a voice here at the virtual stage of the Miami Israeli Parliament. So just in a few words about our three prestige speakers today, before I give them the floor. So as I mentioned before, Michael Steinberger, the Jewish Heritage Alliance is the brainchild of Michael Steinberger. He is the founder and CEO. Michael hails from the tourism industry, where he enjoyed over 4 decades of experience, having been born in Israel to Holocaust survival and living his adult life in the diaspora, helped him in shaping Michael's commitment to Jewish heritage. And we have Gini Milgrom. Gini is a noted genealogist, researcher, and promoter of Sefarad. Born Roman Catholic, she made her way back to her Jewish roots, tracing her crypto-Jewish heritage through 22 generations, dating all the way back to 1405. In many ways, Gini is really the symbol of this campaign and what it tries to achieve. And we have with us Ashley Perry, or with his Hebrew name, Perez, a descendant of Sefarad, worked with several ministries of the Knesset, and is the president of Reconquista, an organization dedicated to reconnecting descendants of Spanish and Portuguese Jews with Israel. So I welcome you all. Thank you so much. And Michael, you have the floor.
Michael, you're muted.
You have to unmute.
Okay, am I good now? So, okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your participation and interest. I would like to thank the Israeli Parliament of Miami for providing this opportunity and for hosting us this afternoon. My name is Michael Steinberger. I am the founder and CEO of Jewish Heritage Alliance, a platform dedicated to promoting the story of Sefarad. Joining us this afternoon are Ashley Perry, president of Reconquista, an organization dedicated to reconnecting descendants of Sefarad Jews with Israel. Our special guest today is Ginny Milgram, who will share with us her remarkable, fascinating journey back to her Jewish roots. My professional background, as was mentioned before, is in tourism, which indirectly led me to discover the story of Sefarad. While the word Sefarad in Hebrew literally means Spain, in historical context, Sefarad refers to the Jews of the Iberian Peninsula, nowadays Spain and Portugal. When I first discovered the story of Sefarad, I realized that A, it was a monumental, far-reaching, complex segment of Jewish world history with profound consequences. Simultaneously, I found that for all its significance and relevance, globally speaking, the story of Sefarad is missing in action, lacking the attention that it really deserves. Slide 2 for a second. I started Jewish Heritage Alliance with a mission to recover and promote the story of Sefarad on a global scale. To accomplish this mission, this ambitious, I should say, mission, I created a strategic alliance, partnering with various organizations, institutions, and individuals that had some level of interest in the story of Sefarad. One example is our partnership with the Museum of the Jewish People at Beit HaTfusot in Tel Aviv. As some of you may know, Beit HaTfusot is a highly respected global institution focused on telling the story of the Jewish people. Slide 3 for a second. Working together with the Portuguese government and others, Beit HaTfusot and Jewish Heritage Alliance created a capsule exhibit called At the Crossroad of Sefarad and the Footsteps of the Crypto Jews. The mobility of the exhibit allows us to promote the story of Sefarad on a global scale by distributing and sharing the story with institutions and organizations around the globe. This exhibit initiative is one example of the way we plan to promote the story of Sefarad. So far, that's about who we are and what we do. If I was to write a movie script, and I hope to, about Sefarad, I would probably pick the title from Clint Eastwood's movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I might rearrange the sequence, but that's a good title for the story of Sefarad. The story of Sefarad and its consequences is a kaleidoscopic, extensive, far-reaching story with endless twists and turns. It's about people, it's about events spanning centuries, and would be very difficult, if not impossible, to cover in one presentation. So for today's presentation, I'm going to fast-track the historic details and provide a summary outline in order to create a backdrop or background for today's presentations. We are often asked when the Jews first arrived to the Iberian Peninsula, and the answer is we don't really know. By some accounts, Jews arrived as early as biblical times. There are references to Spain in the book of Obadiah and some other biblical references. But the earliest real proof that we have dates back to the 4th century. It was an archaeological find. And the story of Sefarad, unfortunately, comes to an end with the expulsion of the Jews in 1492. As is true throughout Jewish history, this was a tumultuous, turbulent period for the Jews of Sefarad, experiencing oppression, persecutions, massacres, pogroms, and forced conversions. So much for the bad. Now for the good. The year 711 ushers in what we could refer to as the good. And interestingly enough, it was when the Moors, who are Muslims from North Africa, attacked and conquered southern Spain, the region we now call Andalusia. The Muslims, being Semites, were more receptive and accepting of the Jews and allowed them to practice their religion openly and freely. Even more interesting was that the Muslims actually collaborated with the Jews, placing them in important and sometimes influential positions. This harmony created the period that we call the Golden Age. This was a period of enlightenment, a period of prosperity, a time when the Iberian Peninsula became a thriving center, a Jewish center, cultivating Jewish philosophers, poets, scientists, and famous Talmudic commentaries like the Maimonides and others. Some Jewish leaders of the period attained high-ranking positions in the Muslim communities called caliphates. One of the most famous was Samuel Anagid, a Talmudic scholar that became the chief minister at the court of Granada, and even more intriguing, he became the top general of the Muslim army in Granada, leading them into many battles with lots of success. I think this was an extremely unique part of this history. Now for the ugly. So the Reconquista, or the Reconquest, represents a period of military campaigns when the Christian kingdoms started to liberate southern Spain and Portugal from the Muslims. This was leading to the end of the Moorish era and brings back the ruthless periods of oppression, pogroms, massacres of the Jews. During these massacres, thousands of Jews were killed, thousands fled, and thousands were forcibly converted. Jewish life in Spain ends abruptly in 1492, when the Jews are told to leave, by the way, without any other possessions, or to convert. Neither option was really good. Those able to leave made their way across the border to Portugal, where unfortunately 5 years later, they too were forced to convert. These forced conversions created the crypto-Jewish phenomenon. So let's stop for a second and review the use of the words crypto-Jews and conversos. Crypto-Jews, conversos, and new Christians are used intermittently. To be sure, they are all describing the Jews that converted to Christianity. But crypto-Jews refers to those who converted but tried to hold on to their Jewish tradition. New Christians is what the church called the converted Jews to distinguish them from the old Christians. And conversos tend to be the catch-all name that describes all of the above. It's important for me to note that nowadays, when discussing conversos or crypto-Jews, we are actually speaking of their descendants. The crypto-Jews were a tenacious and brave people that tried to hold on to their Jewish traditions under the threat of Inquisition, led by the church seeking to catch these new Christians in the act of Judaizing. These crypto-Jews had to live a double life, Christians by day, Jews by night or in hiding. Also challenging were their efforts to pass the Jewish tradition down through the generations, because at those days there were no books, no Sidurim, no Bibles. Everything was done by word of mouth. One amazing example are the crypto-Jews of Belmont in Portugal. This is a community that survived in secrecy for hundreds of years by marrying one another and hiding the Jewish traditions. This community goes back to the 12th century. In fact, they believed that they were the last Jews on earth until they were discovered in 1917 by a Polish Jew named Samuel Schwartz, who told them that there are many Jews practicing all over the world, at which point, slowly but surely, they started coming out of the closet, literally speaking, and started observing the Judaism in the open. The Sefarad legacy lives today in both the Sephardic Jewish community and the converso community. But the glaring difference is that there are 60 million Jews and there are at least 200 million conversos. Think of the numbers, 60 million Jews versus 200 million plus conversos. I'm going to let Ashley Perry discuss this in more detail as he will talk about the converso phenomena. I would like to close my presentation where I began. The Sefarad segment of Jewish history did not and does not have the same coverage and attention as the European or biblical Jewry. Slide 4, please. I invite each and every one of you to follow Jewish Heritage Alliance to learn more about the silent but rich and profound Jewish heritage of this period. I thank you for your attention. Perry, please pick it up from here. Thank you.
תודה,
Thank you
מייקל.
very much. Thank you very much, Michael. I'd like to correct something that Dory said right at the beginning. He said that my Hebrew name is Perez. Actually, my Hebrew name is Perez. My Spanish or Sephardi name is Perez, and I'm known as Ashley Perry. First of all, I'd like to say good evening from Israel, where I'm speaking to you from. I wanted to also pick up a little bit from where Michael left off. You know, most people know of the Sephardim who, after the expulsion from Spain, traveled either to North Africa, the Eastern Mediterranean, etc., etc. There is a community which has impacted on all of those of you who now live in the Jewish community of North America or Latin America, and that is the so-called Spanish and Portuguese Jewish community, which I'm a member of, otherwise known as the Western Sephardim or even the Nashal, the nation. Our story doesn't end in 1497. 1497, there was the mass forcible conversion of the Jews of Portugal, including, for example, my family that fled in 1492 from Spain. In 1497, we were not given an option. We were mass converted on the spot in Lisbon. And, you know, that was, we were just another group that were forcibly converted. What my community managed to do, slowly but surely, we managed to escape over the ensuing generations, dozens of years, let's say, north through Hamburg, Amsterdam, and my family was one of those that set up the British community, the British Jewish community 360 years ago. Where you're living today, the American Jewish community, I'm sure most of you do not know it, but the first Jews in America were conversos, or the descendants of conversos, who were fleeing the Inquisition. The first synagogue in the whole of the Americas was in the north of Brazil in a place called Recife, which were conversos running away from the Inquisition. Then they were chased out, and then they tried to return to Amsterdam, which was the center of the Western Sephardi community. And basically they ended up landing at New Amsterdam, today known as New York, and they were the first Jewish community in North America. So unbeknownst to you, I'm sure most of you, the communities that you now live in, the Jewish community, the most powerful Jewish community outside of Israel in the world, other powerful Jewish communities in Holland, which at one point was one of the trade centers of the world, in London, and pretty much most of, if not all of the Western Jewish communities were started by conversos running away from the Inquisition. The other fact that most people don't know, you know, in Israel, they talk about the Old Yishuv. When they talk about the Old Yishuv, they're talking about those Jews who were in Israel before sort of, let's say, the modern Zionists in the you know, the 19th, the end of the 19th century, or the Old Yishuv. Most of them can trace their ancestry back also to this period, who were either Jews who fled during the expulsion, or they were conversos who fled and set up communities around Tiberias, Tzfat, other sort of places. Most people don't know, but if you're referring to the Old Yishuv, you probably have some converso ancestry. One of the main progenitors of the community was Dona Grazia. Hannah Mendes, if you've ever heard the name, fascinating story. I would really suggest you read it. But why am I telling you this? Because if you look into history of this moment at the end of the 15th century, early 16th century, these were the moments, or even into the 17th century, these were the game-changing moments for the Jewish people. Without them, we wouldn't have the state of Israel, we wouldn't have Zionism, we wouldn't have the great communities of the US, the UK, Latin America, Western Europe, etc., etc. These were all largely created and formed by the Converso, Anusim, crypto Jews, Maranos community, whatever you want to call it. Today, we are sitting at the cusp of another major game-changing, paradigm-shifting moment. At the end of 2018, a relatively small, or I'd say it wasn't particularly small, it was actually 50 or 60 genetic researchers from around the world were asked to check into the genetic makeup of the Latino Hispanic people. And, you know, there was universities, really prestigious universities across the world that really took part of this research, and they found, they weren't looking for anything particular, they just wanted to know because it's a very diverse population, the Latino Hispanic population. But what they found, something remarkable, and I believe one of the singular most important moments in modern Jewish history. They found that every fourth Latino Hispanic person has significant Jewish ancestry. Now you extrapolate the numbers, and that's why Michael talked about 200 million. There are now, we can say, for many years, we speculated, are there 20 million, 50 million, 100 million? I always talked about 100 million, but now we can say with some level of certainty, at least with academic basis, that there are 200 million descendants of Spanish and Portuguese Jewish communities. Now I use that term because conversos, crypto-Jews, Maranos, Anusim, all these other terms have some political or religious significance. But what does this mean? What does this mean for Israel and the Jewish people? As I talked about, game-changing, paradigm shifting. Look at the global Jewish opportunities and the global Jewish challenges. First of all, I believe that this reconnection can and should take place, first of all, for moral, ethical, and perhaps you can argue religious reasons. But there are many byproducts of this. Look at our challenges today. They number, winning the public diplomacy, defeating BDS battle, re-energizing Jewish communities, reaching out to other communities, massively increasing Aliyah demographics around the world, improved diplomacy, increased trade or tourism, and very significantly increasing bonds between Israel and the diaspora. Now, can you imagine what 200 million people who are descended from us, are part of us, were not lost to us, they were just disconnected over the previous centuries. Can you imagine if we reached out to even a percentage? At Reconquista, the organization I created, after I left government, I worked in the Israeli government for many years with the Knesset. We wanted to check who are these people and most significantly what it is that they want. And we found 14%. We did this poll of thousands of people, of these descendants. We found 14% of this number, and I used to talk about 100 million, so I used to talk about 14 million. Today we can talk about 28 million. Say that they want to self-identify in some way with the Jewish people. 28 million people, potentially. Another 30% say that they are aware of their Jewish ancestry and they want to do something with it. Now, many of them don't know. So you can imagine the potential here. And by the way, these numbers are growing. Why? Because every single day, people are taking DNA tests. People are doing genealogical research. People are simply Googling their strange, quote unquote, family traditions. They never ate pork. They never ate bread around Easter. They lit 2 candles on a Friday afternoon. They fasted on strange feasts like Feast of Saint Esther, etc., etc. And they're Googling these things and they're finding that they have some connection to the Jewish people. So they do a bit more evidence. I'm contacted by dozens, hundreds of these people every week, every month, who say, I just learned my family has Jewish ancestry and I want to reconnect in some way. Now, I use the term reconnection because it is not up to us to decide what the level of reconnection is. It's up to the individuals themselves. But there are those who say, I just want to know a little bit more about my ancestry, all the way over to the other extreme, who say, I want to formally rejoin the Jewish people through conversion, through reconnecting, through there's a return ceremony that was written by many great rabbis over history, and even coming on Aliyah, coming to Israel. And there are thousands of shades of gray in between. What we've done in Israel, because I think it's very important, is since we started Reconquista and with many of our other allies, we've really tried to get this on the map. I've used my political connections in the Jewish organizational world. We've have the support of Prime Minister Netanyahu, President Rivlin, former President Peres, Natan Sharansky, Bougie Herzog of the Jewish Agency, and many, many other political, academic, religious, and Jewish organizational leadership. We created for the first time ever a shtula, a caucus in the Knesset on this issue. Usually shtulot caucuses have about 30, 40 people. We had 300 people. Jeannie spoke at this first ever meeting in the Knesset. We approached the Diaspora Affairs Ministry in the last government and told them about this phenomenon. They created for the first time in history a committee to look into this issue to see what can and should the state of Israel, the Jewish people be doing. And they wrote a report, a fascinating report that we contributed a lot to. And they basically said it is our responsibility as the state of Israel to reach out, to help those who want to reach out to us. Because what we found, and we did many tests on this at Reconquista, is we found that once someone finds that they have Jewish ancestry, I've seen people do literally a 180 on their attitudes to Israel. We did tests of people who, you know, in particular hostile pockets of you know, sort of opposition to Israel. And we found that this can be a massive, as I said, game changer for people to understand what it is about Israel, what it is about Jewish history through the prism of their own family historical record. The more that they research their family, the more they research Jewish history, the more they understand or are sympathetic to the state of Israel. We need, and we're seeking allies all the time. These are our people. As I think Dory said, or Yoram said, these are our brothers and sisters. We really need to take this opportunity. It's not open-ended. It's a relatively narrow window of opportunity. We need to help them reconnect. Next time these people are knocking at your doors, are reaching out, it's absolutely our moral and ethical, it's incumbent on us to do so. And I think as the Jewish people in the state of Israel, it has so many trade-offs, if I'm allowed to say that, that it really should be number one on the agenda of it should be the number one issue on the global Jewish agenda. And I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jeannie. Jeannie can really tell the story of someone who has reconnected, someone who has returned, because at the end of the day, these are the people we're talking about. So with that, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
very
everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ashley, Michael, Dory, Z, everyone here today.
Unmute.
I'm sorry? I'm muted? No, I'm good, okay? Yeah. I will tell you my personal story, which usually takes an hour, but I've been given 10.5 minutes. So I'm going to fast forward through it. It's a very painful story every time I tell it, because this was not an easy journey back. I was born in Havana, Cuba, to a family that was Roman Catholic from Spain. And we moved to Miami with the Castro Revolution when I was 4 years old. From that moment on, I was put into the best Catholic schools here in Miami: Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, Catholic university, usually all girls school. And something just did not feel right inside. I've always been, let's use the word, a religious person, but there was just something that I felt that I did not belong to the people that I was born into. A very difficult feeling for a little girl. However, I continued, and I struggled with the Catholic religion all along. It was just something that I had no one to share it with. I couldn't talk to the parents. I couldn't talk to, if I would talk to the teachers, I would just get, learn Latin and come back. And it was just too much. So I lived with this self-doubt, a feeling that I did not. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, did you feel Judaism? Did you feel? No, I felt different. I felt that something was wrong inside in my soul, and it was just going around. So it wasn't until I got to the university here in Miami, Barry University, also at the time an all-women's university, Catholic. It wasn't until I started studying comparative religions that I understood that where my soul was just leaping back was to Judaism. It was a couple of years of comparative religions, meaning it wasn't that was, no. I learned about them all, Shinto, Baha'i, you name it. It was just, my soul was going towards Judaism in a very weird way, a way that you can't explain. But I got married to a Catholic man. We had 2 children, and life just sweeps you away. And it was in my late 20s that I baptized my kids. It was just, I couldn't do this anymore. I really started exploring what Judaism was. And it was a very tumultuous time. It made my family berserk. I mean, anyone can just say your kid converts out. It's like, oh my God. So it was a very difficult time. And I then became a single mom with 2 kids. And it was a very long road back to a conversion of Judaism. It took me 5.5 years to convert here in Miami with the Orthodox Beit Din. I learned enough to have my PhD in Jewish studies, Jewish religion, Jewish everything. 5.5 years is a very long time to have your life in limbo. It's a very long time to be making your way back to something that just felt right. But it was just something I wasn't going to give up. This was just where I needed to be, and I was alone. My family turned against me. All my friends from my Catholic schools turned against me. I was in a limbo for many years, and no one from the other side, no one from the Jewish side was stretching out their hand. It's a very, you can imagine the place. You're a young mom, you've got 2 kids, you want to get on with your life, and the doors have just closed on this side, and you're alone with this Beit Din following a course of study, and no one's saying like, hey, you know, welcome on the other side. So very, very difficult. But eventually and no one was going to stop me, and I did not convert my children for a myriad of reasons. I did not convert them. So I understand fully that the Beit Din had a huge issue with the fact that I was going to have let's say a religious home, and there was going to be 2 non-Jewish kids in it. So I get it. So I became very active in the community once this whole process was over. Very active. I live in South Miami. I attend a Young Israel. I have from the beginning. And a few years later, I met my husband, who was religious from Antwerp. He moved to Miami, and we started, as far as I knew, I was a convert, very active. And then my grandmother died, my maternal grandmother, who all along had been teaching me what she said were Spanish customs. I learned how to do all of the Jewish cooking customs, checking for blood in the eggs, taking a little bit of the dough and making without a blessing, but burning it in the oven. In my first wedding, they had put like the family shawl around my shoulders in the church, which is a Sephardic custom. So there was all, but the day that she died, and my mother told me she had to be buried immediately without fail, like must be hours, it was like I clicked. So she left me some jewelry with a Star of David and a Hamsa, and I immediately started looking into her background. It took me, it's a long, long story, because this is how long it took with all of the resources, all of the financial resources that I had and everything. It took me 10.5 years or so to find the grandmothers up to 1545 in an unbroken maternal lineage, because by then I was sure, by then I had learned enough to understand that she and my grandfather, who were first cousins, and their parents were first cousins, and their parents were first cousins, going all the way back. So I found every single birth certificate, marriage certificate, death certificate, because as I started Googling on the internet, no one had ever done this, but I had certainly had enough experience with an Orthodox Beit Din to know that if I was going to show up in Israel, I wanted my Jewish back. You know, yes, I was halakhically Jewish. I had converted. Everything was great. I was going to, you know, synagogue, and everything's just hunky-dory, but I wanted my Jewish back. I wanted somebody to say I was born Jewish. And initially I wanted it for my kids, because my kids I had not been able to convert. So initially I wanted it for my children, but after I started becoming very vocal on social media, I realized it had nothing to do with my kids. Like Ashley said before, I answer every single email that comes into me. 400 to 600 emails for the past, let's say 15 years, I answer every single one. I wanted to be that hand that was not there for me, because I realized the importance of this. So finally, after all of this paperwork and paperwork and paperwork at the Beit Din Gadol in Jerusalem, my children were already old and out of the house. So again, it had nothing. It was for everybody. I am the tip of the iceberg, not even the tip. I'm just the dot on the tip of the iceberg of the amount of people that are looking for these roots. So the Beit Din Gadol took 2 or 3 years to translate reams of paper back to, like they said before, 22 generations unbroken, 1405, pre-Inquisition Spain and Portugal, where my family jumped back and forth. And finally, I received a letter from the Beit Din Gadol saying that all the generations from before me and all my descendants were Jewish and that no one could ever question this again. So this was wonderful because other people were cheering me on, people that were trying to return. However, I know what kind of a struggle this took. This took the struggle of the fact that there's all these people like me, professionals, perfectly eloquent, can speak, doctors, lawyers, and then there's this incredible amount of people in Latin America, in little villages, who I've had an email telling me that they've walked 3 days from Cusco in Peru to talk to me, to send me an email, and they were going to wait by the computer in some sort of general place until I would answer. So the amount, the human amount of people. So I work with a lot of these communities. We don't have Rabbanim that come. There's traveling Beit Dins. We don't have an ability to get teachers for them. Just 2 days ago, I had a woman on my cell phone on WhatsApp begging me for a moel so that they could circumcise the community. This is in North El Salvador. So this is real. This is very, very real. The reason that you haven't heard, many of you have not heard about this, that is our lives, Ashley's life, it's my life, is because there's very few of us. And even though we had this caucus at the Knesset where I spoke and many other scholars spoke, we are taking this out of academics. Fine, they've written, fine, 100 books have already been written about us. Yay, that's great. Let's pull this out of the textbooks. You know, I actually was president of the Society of Crypto-Judaic Studies, and I had an email from someone asking me, will there be one of them there? What does that mean? Am I in a cage? We're pulling this out of the textbooks. Fine, we're all here. There's people here. Let's not study us anymore. Let's just do something about this. So I have been speaking at the Parliament at the EU. I have been speaking globally. I've written 5 books, starting with my 15 grandmothers, how I found my 15 grandmothers, the recipes. I'm not writing these books. I'm writing these books to tell the story, to be able to speak. And again, I have spoken in every single Latin American country. I am not a Chabad, but I make sure that I speak at Chabad, whether I'm in Denmark or I'm in Uruguay or I'm down, because somebody needs to extend that hand. When somebody comes to you and they say, I feel that I am Jewish, there's something to it. Like my husband would say, who on earth would want to be a Jew in today's climate? And he's right. So if somebody's saying, I want to return to the Jewish people, or I feel I'm Jewish, this is for real. This is as real as it gets, folks. It really is. And you don't really hear of us because we're not like the Russian Jews. We're not coming back with, you know, the whole family and the grandparents with the suitcases. No, we are souls that are returning. My whole family understands its ancestry. My whole family is Catholic. Everyone puts up a Christmas tree. I am probably the proudest Jew you know. And I live in the middle of a Catholic family. And that is how we all live. All of us that are in here, and I was scrolling through the names and I recognize at least 20 or 30 people that contact me with their own private dilemmas. It's not easy to return. So if somebody is saying, hey, I want to return, we need these people. And if somebody can reconnect with their ancestry, and that makes them be proud, even if they are not fully returning to the Jewish people, if all they're doing is saying, hey, I'm really proud, 15 generations ago, my family was Jewish, and if that can make them be friends of Israel, and if that can make them be friends of the Jews, we need as many people around the world. We have thousands of people leaving us every day of our own, just going and assimilating, and here are all these people, millions, potentially knocking at the door. So I think that it's about time that we extend the hand and bring them to us. Since 2015, I have been dedicating myself not only to speak on this globally. I speak in English, I speak in Spanish, I'll speak in whatever language you want me to speak. But I need to tell this story. And by the way, the village where my ancestors were taken underground and had to live in roach-infested underground to be able to pray. This is the village of my ancestors. This is how it looked then. This is how it looks now. 523 years ago, my own grandparents were born here, where you see, and so did 523 ancestors. I traced my lineage back to 45 people that were burned at the stake. I read their Inquisition documents at night. I know what happened to my people. Now I need the rest of the world to understand, not because of, let's not look at it historically, like I said, get us out of the textbooks and start talking about us as a people, because we all know what happened in the Inquisition. But the interesting thing about the Inquisition documents is that they have our full genealogy, 10 or 12 or 15 pages of genealogy. So for the last 4 to 5 years, I have been visiting every single archive in the world, and with money that was given to me in Israel to be able to get this done. I'm battling the Catholic Church. I'm up there with the directors of these archives. I'm trying to get our history back so that all of these people on the other side of the world can say, I connect. And they can connect spiritually, or they can connect via all of these documents that we can find. So this is something that is incredibly important, and we have to understand that it is happening. It's happening every single day, and we have to go forward. Organizations like Reconquista and like Michael Steinberger's organization and a few others around the world, that's exactly what we're doing. And I will never continue to be quiet about this. From my dad's side, they were also crypto Jews. My family has been judged in the Inquisitions of Lisbon, Sevilla, Cadiz, Canary Islands, Cartagena, Colombia. And I've had scores and scores of family that were burned at the stake. It has to count for something. So I thank you all for listening to this tiny bit of my work, my story, and I'm really happy to be able to share this with you today.
Thank you very much, Jeannie. Michael, Ashley, anything else before I make 2 comments and then we open it for Q&A? Thank you so much, Jeannie. It's an unbelievable story. And I would say more in a second, but I want to go to your peers first to see if they want to add anything.
For my part, the last thing that I said in my presentation, I just will invite everyone to follow us and to keep up with the story. It's as Ashley said, and as Ginny pointed out, this is a fascinating, amazing story that's unfolding in front of us in real time. Jewish Heritage Alliance, together with all of our friends and associates, we're in the business of recapturing and promoting the story. And so my takeaway, or what I want to live sort of resonating behind the presentation is, please follow us. And this way you can be more familiar with this amazing developing story.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael. So listen, again, myself personally, my family is from Spain. I grew up all my life knowing so, but I guess life was simple for me because they left Spain as Jews. They went to Greece. They lived there for 200 years, and then they came to Jerusalem, and very simple life for us, Latino, and the heritage and the food. And when Dory, I'll be honest, and when Dory brought this topic to us about the Anusim or the crypto Jews, I was like, I wasn't sure this is a topic for the parliament, but I'm seeing over 300 people joining us. Many are out of the parliament. And I see the action on the chats. Usually we don't have that much activity on the chat. So it looks like the topic is burning in many people's hearts. I am a pragmatic person in general. And my question to you is, you're mentioning big numbers and then the opportunity, potentially 200 million or 100 million. And us as the Jewish people today, we're only touching 30 million maybe. sorry, 15 million. Okay, 15 million Jews. We know in the Holocaust we lost the potential for another 30 million today. So you're talking amazing numbers from here. And the numbers add up one at a time, like genie, let's get another genie and find another genie and bring them back to our religion. So my question is, what do we do as a country? It almost feels to me, I was thinking as you go, maybe, you know, we have 34 ministers now. Maybe we should have a minister for Crypt to Jews, because maybe that one minister can bring another million people to our, you know, religion. So what Israel is really doing, and if a person like yourself, Jenny, you found what you found about yourself, you probably spend almost a half lifetime finding your heritage, proving you're Jewish, coming back to the religion. But most people do not have time for this. And if they found out, you know what, I'm probably Jewish, or I have Jewish origins, what's the process for them to go through? How difficult it's going to be for them if they don't want to spend 5 years of their life? Do they need to go through a conversion? Is there somebody in Israel they can contact to help them, or they're on their own to start the journey on their own?
I think I'll answer for not Israel, and I'll let Ashley answer for Israel. If you are in the United States, you will probably, I know several people that have had to convert, and I know several people that have just had like those mini conversions because they've been able to prove their lineage. If you are in South America, you have to rely on one of these organizations. I personally work a lot with Kulanu that reaches out to these outlying communities, and we've gone down there and done mass conversions. The problem is the sustainability of that, because if you don't have a rabbi present or a teacher or a leader in El Salvador or Nicaragua or wherever, then even though we convert them, it's an issue with sustainability. There are no official Beit Dins south of Miami. So in Latin America, you can't. Chabad will help a little bit, and the Sephardim have their own rules and regulations, but it's very difficult in the villages. I'm not talking in Montevideo, I'm talking in the villages. Very, very difficult. And a lot of people want to make Aliyah, and then I'll leave that with Ashley.
Right. And Ashley, before you go, I'm reading one of the comments, you know, Georgina, and she says, you know, I feel alone. Guide us, help us. So what's really the process for these people?
I'd like to talk about two different levels here. First of all, conversion. As I said, Reconquista does not deal just with those who want to return to be Jews. It's anyone who wants to reconnect religiously, politically, historically, whatever it is. But I'm just going to relate because I've done a lot of research on this, and I'm not a particularly, let's say, Jewishly learned person, but I've been fascinated by this topic, especially as my community, the Western Sephardim, the Spanish-Portuguese community, was usually the place for centuries after where these people would flee to and say, I want to return to the Jewish community. So they come to Amsterdam, they come to London, they come to New York, to our centers. And up until the 18th century, if one of these fled, one of these Anusim fled, they were immediately accepted into the community with no conversion, nothing. You can argue that, you know, during those years, a lot of our community, you know, they knew exactly who was who in Spain and Portugal, so there wasn't much necessity. What is fascinating, and most Jews don't know this, but I would argue that almost every single Jew, Israeli Jew, diaspora Jew, whatever they are, is probably from the Bnei Anusim. What do I mean by this? That they are the descendants of converted Jews, because what we know is throughout history, almost every community at one point was forcibly converted, whether it's France, Germany, Russia, Yemen, Syria, Iran, Ethiopia, the list goes on and on. So wherever we come from, whether we're Edot Mizrach, Sephardi, Ashkenazi, Russian, whatever it is, our ancestors probably at one point were forcibly converted. Now, what does this mean? This means that so many rabbis throughout history had to deal with, and probably most rabbis throughout history had to deal with. We know the Rambam had to deal with this, Shulchan Aruch had to deal with this, the Abravanel had to deal with this, Rashi dealt with this, the Talmud even dealt with this back in their day. What do you do with someone who was forcibly converted? Now, throughout history, there was three categories of Jews today, or people. today there's two categories. There's Jews and there's non-Jews. That's it. No gray, no, it's you're Jewish or you're not Jewish. Throughout history, there was a third category called the Bnei Anusim, the descendants of those who were forcibly converted. And many rabbis, even up until, someone's not muted, up until...
Maybe you can, maybe you mute everybody. 1 second, please. Maybe you mute everybody and then we go to unmute again.
Lucia and Alma have to be muted. Anyway, going back to my point, but the point is that many rabbis, if not most rabbis in history, had to answer who are the descendants of those who were forcibly converted. And most rabbis said, like they had questions, can we drink from their wine? Can we marry their children? Can we, inherit, etc., etc.? And the rabbis came back in the vast majority of cases and said they are Jewish. Sometimes they had to go through what's called Giul Chumra, a pro forma conversion. Sometimes they had to go through a bit more, a bit less, depending. And I have letters from the great rabbis of the 21st century or 20th century, Rav Ovadia Yosef, Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu, Rav Soloveitchik, etc., all of them who said different things about what they have to go through, whether they have to go through return ceremony or Giul Chumra or full conversion. It is our halachic mandate to welcome these people back. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would talking about the Israel level. When I left government in 2015, the first article I wrote, which was Burning in Me, which was as a result of laws that the Spanish and Portuguese parliaments had written recently, where those of us who could show that we come from Sephardim were invited to apply for citizenship. It means if you can show that you have Sephardi ancestry, you are invited to apply for citizenship in Spain and Portugal. There are different criteria. My brother got his Portuguese passport. Portuguese was always easier because you had to learn Spanish and take a Spanish cultural proficiency test. And I thought this is wonderful. It's a great moment. It's a great reckoning, righting a historical wrong, etc., etc. But to me, more important than the countries that oppressed us and threw us out, how much more so than the people that we were disconnected from. I wrote at that time, and my dream was, but why don't we as the state of Israel do something similar? Why don't we say, if you can prove, and by the way, not anyone can just say, okay, I want my citizenship. You have to meet certain criteria. You have to show an affinity, you have to show historical background, you have to show this, that, and the other. There's a whole list of things that you have to prove to receive Portuguese or Spanish citizenship. We can make it as tough or as lenient as possible, whatever it is. We have to, obviously we don't want to just, anyone who says, oh, I have Sephardic ancestry, give me citizenship. But why don't we as the state of Israel, as the Jewish state, create a law that says, if you can prove A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever it is, then you can also apply for citizenship. By the way, we have done something similar. There is a group of Ethiopian Jews in Israel called the Flashimura. Their ancestors were Christians. They were converted Jews, were Christians. We have the Mashadi Jews of Iran. They were also forcibly converted. Today, there's a whole community of them in Israel. We have many, many precedents here, not in the numbers that we're talking about, but we know how to make this happen if we want to. So, with the caucus, we're about to reestablish the caucus because finally we have a new government and we have a Knesset that's actually really active. So we've already put the application in with the speaker to recreate the new caucus. We're going to be working with the new diaspora affairs minister. We're going to be working with a lot of members of Knesset, a lot of ministers, just to put the issue, this law that I'm talking about is not going to happen tomorrow. Maybe it won't happen in next year, the year after. I hope at one point it will, but we need to get this issue on the agenda. As I said, I've met with everyone from the Prime Minister, Defense Minister, Foreign Minister, etc., of previous governments. When I set out to this to meet all these people, I really thought, okay, 50% will say you're crazy, 50% will say, okay, that's interesting. I have to say the rabbis, the political leaders, the religious leaders, academic leaders, I would say 95%. I was amazingly surprised how receptive they are. Bibi Netanyahu's father, Ben-Zion Netanyahu, was one of the foremost historians on this issue. And he was extremely receptive to it. You can find letters of support from Prime Minister Netanyahu and many other people on our website at Reconquista. And as I said, I just think that this is the movement it's got to be the #1 point in the global Jewish agenda for the 21st century, just because it's such a pressing need. And there's so many positive things that can come from it.
Thank you very much. And I'd like now to open it for some questions, so you can raise your hand, you know, on Zoom if you want. I know I have two people that wrote us. Eli Alchek, he wanted to ask a question. So if you can raise your hand, Ziv, see if you can find him. Or if you want to ask questions, you know, in the chat, it's almost easier because we are a very big group, and I can just then read the questions from there.
I've been reading a little bit of the questions on the chat, and a lot of people are saying they feel alone. How do they learn the practices? How do they learn? You can contact me through my website, geniamilgrom.com, and I can give you many different references where you can go to learn customs, where you can go to learn a little bit more about the people. You can learn a little bit about the Jewish people and the history, which is what some are asking. And never feel alone. You can email me and I will give you my phone number and you can call me. So never, ever, ever feel alone.
Excellent, so much. And Ziv, can you unmute Juan Grau? He likes to ask a question.
Hi, I'm Juan Grau. I live in Spain. First of all, thank you all. It has been really, really inspiring and interesting. I wanted to speak about the situation that most B'nai Anosim cases arise in the United States and in in Latin America. In my case, I'm Spanish. I was born and raised in Spain. There are many families here who have Jewish heritage and they are sure of it, but there is not such a kick for following it. Spain is a very secular country and people don't pursue religion. But in my case, I was sure since my childhood of my Jewish heritage because my parents told me so. My question is about what are the possibilities for a person who lives in a place where the Jewish infrastructure is scarce and hasn't got many possibilities? I myself, I am active in a Jewish community. I am active in an Orthodox Sephardic Moroccan Sephardi community, and I'm eligible for Aliyah because I converted Reform many years ago when I lived in Barcelona. But the point thing that in order to be accepted as a member, in order to be accepted as a chaver for the Moroccan Sephardi community, I need to be accepted by the Israeli rabbinate. But the point is, there is no actual Beit Din in Spain. This isn't. And an Israeli Beit Din used to come every year, but by mandate of the Israeli rabbinate, it doesn't come anymore. So the situation is quite difficult. So some people tell me that there are possibilities in the United States, or you can make Aliyah, but all the solutions go through having to leave the community, because almost nobody in the United States would convert a foreigner that's not actually living in an American community. I can produce recommendation letters, but it seems that I'm just stuck. I have been 3 years in a conversion course, Orthodox, and the point is, I'm just at the end of the road, but I feel that I'm stuck on the end of the road, and I would like to know if there are any advice that you could offer someone in that situation.
I'll answer, Huang, and then Ashley may be able to answer. At about 3 years into my conversion process, I almost jumped off the roof of the building. It was really difficult. If you're almost at the end, and I know you don't want to hear this, but you know what? It really is so important to have you come over to this side. Right now, because of the Beit Din situation, I spoke about it before, we need you really need you to finish this and get up there and speak like the rest of us at some point. So I am just begging you to stick with it, even if it's another year. This is what we're dealing with right now. And until we can make these changes in Israel, in your own country, without having to leave, this is the hand that's dealt to us. And maybe, you know, it's some sort of tikkun, correction in that's placed before us, but we really need you to be on our side and speak up, and you need to finish. That's how I see it. Maybe Ashley, you may have a different answer on that. Ashley needs to be unmuted.
Thank you. Thank you, Juan. I have a lot to say on this subject. It's something which we've had to deal with. At the end of the day, again, Reconquista isn't about conversion, but there are people who want conversion, so we have to find durable solutions. I deal largely on the macro level in this, trying to find solutions for the general people rather than you know, individuals, although I do have perhaps solutions, because I hear many, I know people in Spain who have gone to the UK or done much of the learning. I know you can do much of the learning online today. You know, we're in a Zoom conversation here, and so this presents an absolutely new reality. I know Orthodox rabbis who are prepared to help people convert if they've reached a certain level of learning, and all you'd have to do is travel to abroad to do the actual physical conversion and then return. But basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to collect all the psakei halacha, all the religious legal decisions throughout history. And I've been working with some wonderful people here who've looked into this. Again, I said earlier, I'm not the most learned person in this area, but I know the information I found, and I've met with a lot of rabbis. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get a small group of rabbis, you know, Orthodox, because Israel, that's the only one that's recognized here, and basically write a psak halacha, a religious legal decision on how to treat Bnei Anusim today. We have many decisions, the Shulchan Aruch, the Abravanel, Rambam, etc., etc. As I said, up to this day, Rav Soloveitchik, Rav Rabbi Yosef, Rav Chaliyahu, many rabbis. And I want someone to write a decision, what we do for Juan and thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe more, of Juans who are out there who want to go through, who want to return officially, formally to the Jewish people. We have to have a decision. We have to have some sort of consistent message. This is how, if you seek it, to return formally to the Jewish people, through conversion, through return ceremony, whatever it is, that's up for the rabbis to decide. I'm not a rabbi, I'm far from it. But what we're trying to work on is to get that small group of rabbis who can then make that decision, to make a very clear path to Juan and the others like yourself who do that. But again, this is a slow process in Israel when it comes to religious institutions. Don't get me started. I've worked in Israeli politics for far too long to give you a one-word answer on this, but we're working on it. That's basically the bottom line. But it's a little bit of a lengthy process.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Anyone, you can raise your hand or you can write on the chat. Somebody's asking how much DNA results play a role in acceptance here or making their conversion easier?
It's not yet accepted as having a role. I always highly recommend taking DNA tests, and I saw people before asking which way to go. I recommend two. One is Family Tree DNA, and the other one is MyHeritage from Israel. MyHeritage has managed to have 5 different levels of, let's say, Jewish DNA, from Mizrahi to Sephardic to Ashkenaz and so on. And both have different pools. So I suggest you do one and upload the results to the other, or vice versa. As far as rabbinical acceptance of this, it has nothing to do. But as far as finding a connection, it's important. People are doing these tests and finding that they have a 28 or a 32% DNA that's Jewish, and it actually sets people a lot faster on their journey. So I think it's very helpful to do DNA, but it is not yet, let's say, universally accepted as you're Jewish if you have Jewish DNA.
Okay.
Ashley wants to
Thank
say
you.
something. Yeah.
Yes. If we can unmute Ashley.
I keep on getting muted. Anyway, yeah, if I can add to that, you know, a DNA can't tell you if you're Jewish. You can have 99% Jewish DNA, and that doesn't mean you're halakhically Jewish. You can have 1% Jewish DNA, and you can be halakhically Jewish. So DNA doesn't really tell you if you are Jewish. It tells you if you have Jewish ancestry. From my experience, and the guys at MyHeritage, who I've got a lot of friends amongst, may not be happy with this, but the only one that tells if you have Iberian Jewish ancestry is Family Tree DNA. MyHeritage, a wonderful, wonderful organization. When they talk about Sepharadi, they tend to talk about Middle Eastern North African or Yemenite Sepharadi. The last time I checked, granted it may be out of date, was about 6, 7, 8 months ago, and they were not able to check for specifically Iberian Sephardic ancestry. The best place that I would recommend for people who think that they have Jewish heritage and they're from the Hispanic world is through Family Tree DNA, because they can really go back pretty far and they can tell you one way or another if you do have some Jewish Sephardic ancestry from Spain and Portugal.
Okay, thank you very much. FYI, we shared via the chat the emails for all the speakers, today, Ashley, Jeannie, and Michael. So feel free to reach out to them. You can always go to the JewishHeritageAlliance.com and through there connect to Michael or find additional resources. Any other questions? Any other comments? Anyone? I see Yossi Shabtai would like to say something. Ziv, if you can locate Yossi Shabtai, please. In the meantime, I'll read another question. Has the Spanish government commented?
He's unmuted now, he can speak.
Okay, go ahead.
שלום לכולם, אני מדען, מתעסק הרבה עם גנטיקה מולקולרית.
In English, please.
Okay, sorry. I am a scientist and use a lot molecular genetics and biology, and we do a lot of DNA analysis, which is pretty popular related to the corona and RNA analysis. But the reason I asked to raise my hand is you see my name is Shabtai, and my parents, my father came from Romania, my mother from Poland. And at the beginning of the 90s, we discussed it on a seder in Passover, and we asked my father, how come they came with the name Shabtai? So he started a story about his grandfather that came from Worms in Germany, Vermeisa. And as a processor of leather to Romania, nobody wanted to deal with this dirty profession. And in his documents, and my nieces have photograph of these documents, 4 generations before my father, say that the name was Shepsel, which was actually Shabtai, and in brackets. And the main name that they were using when they moved in Europe was Saint Michel, the Saint Michael, which was a sacred, honored, respected saint in Catholics. So this was actually the passport to move in Europe between places when they're persecuted. So my father was born in Romania, in Iasi, had 2 brothers, 2 sisters. They all came to Israel, except the eldest brother remained religious and sent to Auschwitz. So when we did DNA analysis backward, we found roots going down to nearly the 11th century. And we went to the Museum of Diaspora. They have a project of the roots of names in Jewish tradition. And one of the documents said the Jews in Spain and Portugal used to honor males born on Saturdays with names Shabbat, Shabbati, Shabtai, like this. Not sure if I can prove it. I didn't dig inside into the roots of names, but it comes to mind. Thank you.
Toda rabba. Thank you, Yossi.
Can I say something?
Of course, Ashley.
Something that's fascinating is good news for all you Ashkenazim out there, that there's a very strong likelihood that you probably have Sephardic ancestry. There was a time in history around the beginning of the last millennium where the overwhelming vast majority of Jews, the whole earth, lived in the Iberian Peninsula. Today, we know that many of the Jews, after the expulsion, they moved into the European interior. There were whole villages and towns in Poland just of Sephardim. We know in Germany, I talked about earlier, my family before it reached Amsterdam and then London, went through Hamburg. There are many, many Jews who are fully Ashkenazi today, whose ancestry was in Sefarad. I'll give you one example. You know, Benjamin Netanyahu has been a little bit in the news today. Well, his brother Ido, who obviously shares the same DNA as him, did his DNA a few years back. And what do you know? They have Sephardic ancestry. I know people who are Russian Jews, look as white, have whatever name, and they have Sephardic ancestry. If you look at the list that the Spanish and Portuguese government put out of names that can be one criteria for particular, possible citizenship, obviously my name Perez would be on the list. That's obvious. But there are names like Klein. Klein is a very Ashkenazi name, right? But Klein was Catan in Spain. And we know that Kleins descended from the Catans of Spain, and they have Sephardic ancestry. There are many, many other names. And I would suggest that probably, I don't know percentages, I'm not sure if anyone studied this, but I would say a very large percentage of people who are considered today Ashkenazi probably have roots in Spain as well.
Thank you very much, Ashley. And now I'm going to go to Yafa. She wanted to make a comment about the community in Latin America.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Yafa da Costa. We work with individuals and also emerging communities, mainly in Latin America. My organization, one of the ones that Jeannie referred to, there are other organizations doing this work, is called Ezra La'anusim. We have about 24 communities in Brazil. I saw some people asking about Brazil. We have a community we work with in Cuba. In Central America, we're working in Honduras, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Nicaragua. We have 3 communities, emerging communities in Mexico. So there's an awful lot going on, as well as we work with individuals all over the world, including Australia, New Zealand, Philippines, and into the Balkans and Middle East. There are a lot of Persian people in the United States, by the way, who have ancestry going back to the conversos. So my organization is about 15 years old, and I also am from this background. I made a complete return, Gir L'Chumra, many years ago, 20 years ago, as a matter of fact. But the elephant in the room that I'd like to see if someone can speak to is the fact that in Latin America, in 1927, there was a ruling, a community ruling, a takana, it's called, about the Jewish communities. It started in Argentina, in the Syrian community, and extended out from there to other communities, eventually reaching all of the Latin American countries, basically. there may be some exceptions, saying that these Jewish communities would not accept converts or reverts, which is their term for returning, into their communities until the end of days, quote unquote, whatever they meant by that, which I'm not sure. So it's very, very difficult. Jeannie talked about sustainability. Even if we have rabbis, and we do, we have rabbis fly out to these communities and work with people for their conversion. We have 2 rabbinic courts based in Israel that we can send people to for a return process, which is called Gir L'Chumra, which is what I also went through. So we do have some infrastructure that's been developed over several years. But in Latin America, it's extremely difficult because of what Jeannie referred to with sustainability. So if we have a Beit Din come out to a community and they do these conversions, or if it's return, whichever applies to that individual or that family, how can they sustain themselves if they don't have a rabbi, if they don't have a mikveh, if they don't have the ability to lane and read the Torah, they don't have a place to have a minyan, okay, it's not sustainable. And then what happens? The Ministry of Interior has a ruling, it's a very fair ruling, it's across the board. For all converts, and again, if these people converted, they have to, after their conversion, live in a recognized and accepted Jewish community for a minimum of 9 months after their conversion. And these communities, for example, even the emerging communities that we're working with right now, are certainly not accepted or recognized. So even if they were to be living in that kind of a community, that's an issue. So they can't make Aliyah because of this lack of acceptance of these communities, and the regular Jewish communities in Latin America won't accept, because of the Takana from 1927, which is still obviously in effect, they won't accept converts or returnees into their communities. So they really are stuck, not just one. You know, they really, really are stuck. We can train them. We have rabbis teaching them online. We have the best experience we have so far is in Mexico, which I won't go into that right now. But we are changing minds and hearts in Mexico with even some of the rabbis and the people in the regular Jewish community, which is wonderful. And if that's successful, we want to use that as a model for all the other Latin American countries. But it is extremely difficult because of this takana. So if anybody would like to address that.
Thank you. I'll let Jeannie maybe answer shortly. I don't think we're at the stage.
Yeah, I'll answer very shortly. We're aware of the difficulties, and they've been many years in coming, and will be many years in unraveling, because we hope to do it before the end of days. However, we work around a lot of this, and as Yafa is, as we are, as other communities are, it would take many, many years to unravel this, but we're hoping to be able to do that. And I mean, that is my daily work, to try to do a lot of this. So we're working on it.
Thank you very much. And with that, I think we're going to end. I see one more question that I'm going to ask, and then I'm going to let Michael do the final comments. And the question is, what would the government, or what is the government in Spain says about the topic when they see efforts to go back to the Anusim, or what other governments in the world commented when they've seen these efforts? And like in my mind, Israel may seen in a bad light if, you know, people go and do, you know, trying to go back to the communities, bring people back to Judaism. So any experience on that?
Well, I do have experience with going back to Spain and grasping this citizenship that was never done for people like me. Because people like me, again, we spoke enough about it, going back, digging in Inquisition documents, people like me that were 500 years in the Catholic Church, That's not what this is for. It was for the Sephardim that left, that were in Salonika, that were in the Ottoman Empire. That's certainly easy. I think I met one person that was able to do what I did and get the Spanish citizenship. In Portugal, it's even harder because in Portugal, you have to be an active member of a Jewish community. So, you know, let's say that my son wanted to do this, who has, you know, respects his ancestry, but is not an active member of a Jewish community. Even my son, who is Jewish halakhically, would not be able to do the Portuguese return. So I believe that it eluded the opportunity to include the descendants of crypto Jews to a large degree. I'm not saying some didn't get through, but it eluded that opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Ashley,
Jeannie,
I believe Ashley wants to. Ashley.
Unmute Ashley.
Okay, thank you. Right, so I've been working quite a lot with some figures in both Spain and Portugal. We shouldn't lump them together. They're very different governments. They have very different ways of looking at this. Portugal has always been a little bit more sympathetic, let's say, to its Jewish past, and certainly made it easier for citizenship than Spain. But even, and I've worked with the Portuguese government, they want to reach out to the Jewish world. They understand their Jewish heritage. The current president of Portugal is very open and proud of his Jewish heritage. In Spain, it's a bit more complicated, but I'm part of an effort to create, for the first time ever, there's only one country in the whole of Europe that doesn't have a Jewish museum, and that's Spain. So I'm part of an effort to create a Hispano-Jewish museum in Spain, which will really tell the story, not just of the Jewish story in Sefarad, but the Spanish story, the Hispanic story, the wider Hispanic story, that these tens of millions of people who were previously or still are connected to the Jewish story. And we've received a lot of assistance, a lot of goodwill from very high-ranking Spanish officials. And this could also be a great repository of telling the story, telling the Jewish connection to Spain, but also the Spanish connection to the Jewish people. So things are changing. Things are changing in Spain, in Portugal, in Israel, amongst the Jewish people. The previous person who talked about some roadblocks, what I can see behind the scenes here in Israel, where we're doing some work, some quiet but effective work, minds are changing, interest is growing, knowledge is extending, and I think that's the way we have to do it. We have to, first of all, inform. We can't run from A to Z. We have to, you know, go through the various steps. The first thing we have to do is make sure that people are informed. And that's what, why it's wonderful that, that the Miami Parliament and many other organizations are giving us these platforms to talk about this, because it is such a historic movement that is taking place right now. But first and foremost, people have to know about it. So really, thank you to all of you who are involved in this, to Michael, to Yoram, to Dory, to Jeannie, obviously. You know, please go out there, talk about it, read about it. You know, the next person who reaches out to you, be warm to them, understand who they are, where they come from. And I think together this will be a tremendous movement. I don't think we've had a movement that encompasses the Jewish people since the freeing of Soviet Jewry. And if you remember at the beginning, I used this as a paradigm. At the beginning, there were a few crazies who were just always talking about it or whatever. Most people, you know, sort of just reacted either negatively or whatever it is. But in the end of it, everyone from the presidents of the state of Israel to the average Jew in the streets, wherever they were in the world, became involved in it. That's how we were successful. That's how we achieved what we achieved. So I believe that this is the next great movement, and we need every single person involved, from the highest levels, government officials, rabbinic officials, academics, Jewish organizational leaders, but we also need you, the smaller organizations and the people on the street. This is how we will succeed, and this is how we will find a better future for the Jewish people, the descendants of the Jewish communities, and really, I think it's possible and attainable.
Do we know a percent or a number of converters that make Aliyah? People like you, Jeannie, that...
It's very small at the moment for some of the, because of some of the challenges, because there's a lack of understanding. You have to still, because we're still living in a paradigm where you have to go through a conversion. Again, you can convert reform. wherever you are and make an aliyah, that you will not then be recognized as Jewish. So there's people like Juan who are in that limbo. What we did, we tested this. We took surveys and we found from the 14% who wanted to self-identify as Jewish, we found 11% of that 14% who said that they wanted to make aliyah. Now you extrapolate those numbers and you'll get to some very nice numbers. That's a test that we've undertaken in the last couple of years. But we have to make some changes.
No, that's important. And then Michael, before I'm closing, I'm going back to you for final words for your group. Michael?
I think he's muted.
Mute now. Okay.
Very good. You're on.
Look, a lot has been said, and we need to bring this to a close. I just would say that while this subject is thousands of years in the making, I am with Ashley and Ginny. I say to you that this is a subject whose time has come. The subject is gaining a lot of momentum. And to answer Yafa's issues, I mean, there are a lot of people doing a lot of good work. 2 of them are in front of you today, or 3 of us. There are many others that we know about that are doing the good work. The most important thing is today's presentation. This is taking the subject from what I would call horizontal, where we talk amongst each other, and going mainstream and taking it vertical. The idea of Jewish Heritage Alliance is to bring together all of these issues and all of these people, and together to have the footprint or the voice to get the story out and make a difference. And so we thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate everybody's interest. Ginny, you're amazing. Thank you. Ashley, yasher koach to you. Keep on keeping on. And we will get things done for sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Again, thank you everybody to all that joined us today. We had at some point more than 330 people. The chat was very active, so it sounds like it's a topic that there's not enough discussion about and enough information about. And we shared all the information here on the chat, and we will publish more information on our WhatsApp. And here, thank you, Z, for sharing the websites. It's pretty amazing, and we're lucky that us as the Israeli parliament here in Miami, we're able to bring all the continents together around an unbelievable important topic, because again, as we're losing people around the world, and mostly they're out of Israel to other religions, then that's an opportunity for us to bring people back. So to you, Michael, and Ashley, and Jeannie, it's unbelievable. Your passion is unbelievable what you're doing. We're blessed. We have people like you to bring the topic to the agenda. And from here, all the 300 people that join us today, hopefully we'll be able to push it even further. And again, I think few people mentioned on the chat, eventually to really move mountains, we need the state of Israel. It starts with 3 people like yourself, but we need the state of Israel. And I know Ashley is very involved with the Knesset and the government. And I think eventually they'll be able to move things. But every person we touch and bring back, it's a blessing. And I like to thank again everybody that joined us. Thank you, 3, for making this happen. Thank you again, Dory, for coordinating, and to my management group. And thank you again to the other 2 parliaments where I see a lot of members here from the Riviera Parliament and the Boca Parliament. It was a pleasure to have you here. We wish you a lot of luck. We will push your topic and your agenda on our Facebook as well. And good luck. You'll take it from here. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.